Yinon Plan, the planned destruction of Arab states. Relations between Europe and Islam are ancient. At the end of the 19th century, Germany's attempts to create a railway to connect Hamburg to the Ottoman Empire exacerbated rivalries between the Anglo-Saxon thalassocracy and the Reich of Wilhelm II. This led to the First World War. The British couldn't bear to see this oil-producing region economically controlled by Germany. The Anglo-American victory in 1918 allowed the British and Americans to control the entire Arabian Peninsula. They were able to maintain their control despite much opposition, as in Iran, when Mossadegh came to power. In consolidating their control of this region, the British and the Americans took things to another level. The principle of the clash of civilizations, a term coined in 1957 by Bernard Lewis in his book Islam, was reinforced by a whole series of initiatives for the benefit of the Anglo-American world and Israel. We should note Richard Pearl's report, A Clean Break, a New Strategy for Securing the Realm, a report calling for Saddam Hussein's departure. In addition, we have the article written by Ralph Peters, calling for the balkanization of Muslim states. It is the article written by Oded Yinon that comes to mind, former official at the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which is the most hard-hitting. The article was published in 1982 by the World Zionist Organization, after a detailed examination of the ethnic and religious composition of the Muslim world from Pakistan to Morocco, Lebanon, Egypt, Sudan, Libya, and the entire Muslim world. In light of the aforementioned documents, it is not possible to believe that the famous Arab Spring was spontaneous, even though Arab governments are plagued by nepotism and corruption. Israel Shahak, who lived from 1933 to 2001, professor of chemistry and president of the Israeli League of Human Rights, gave the Israeli game away when he translated Oded Yinon's article into English. This valuable document is entitled The Zionist Plan for the Middle East. This document accurately details the policy advocated by Oded Yinon and how it fits into the Zionist strategy. The booklet states, this essay originally appeared in Hebrew in Kivunim. This document highlights the fact that the desire to disintegrate Arab nations was programmed some time ago, and this is why this document is so valuable. In his foreword, Shahak quotes Zev Schiff, defense correspondent for the Israeli newspaper Haaretz, who stated on the 2nd of June 1982 that the best thing that could happen to Israel would to see Iraq broken up into free zones. Current events in the Arab world should fill some Israelis with joy. The policy of disintegration also calls for a greater Israel, which was the wish of the founding fathers of Zionism. This is demonstrated by the map included in the document, showing the borders of the Jewish state stretching from the Nile to the Euphrates. One thing is certain, such a policy can only lead to Arab and Israeli conflict. Could this be the price to pay in order that some can achieve a new Garden of Eden in the future? The number of plans made by Israeli Anglo-Saxon policy research centers to restructure the countries of North Africa and the Middle East has grown steadily over the years. Indeed, we can compile a list of the works and the secret meetings which have accumulated over a century. Arguably, these geographical realignments began in 1916 during World War I with the Sykes-Picot Agreement, which paved the way for the dismantlement of the Ottoman Empire and the allocation of the territories to the British and French colonial powers.
It was a secret accord signed on May 16, 1916, that carved up Ottoman-controlled Arab territories into different zones of influence under British, French, and Russian control. The agreement was signed by two senior diplomats, Britain's Sir Mark Sykes and France's François-Georges Picot. Sykes drew a line on a map extending roughly from Palestine to Iraq, marking the land to the south and east for Britain and the north and west for France. Firstly, the agreement was signed to protect British and French regional influence in the area. Secondly, the British wanted to protect and secure land and sea routes to India. Thirdly, the division of the territories showed Britain's need for a northern French buffer between Britain's Middle East holdings and Russia. The Arabs didn't know about the division of their land until a year and a half later, when Russian newspapers published a copy of the agreement. The British had promised them something entirely different: self-determination and control of territories in return for revolting against their Ottoman overlords. Many consider the borders drawn up by the imperial powers as illegitimate, designed to keep Arabs weak and divided. The Islamic State group defied the borders to establish a caliphate across Syria and Iraq in the summer of 2014. IS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi said of the group's expansion, "This blessed advance will not stop until we hit the last nail in the coffin of the Sykes-Picot conspiracy." In light of the rapid developments and the rise of new groups in the region in the past few years, some say the region's borders will soon be redrawn once more. Iraqi Kurds, for example, threatened to hold a referendum on independence this year. Yet in the current state of turmoil, it is highly unlikely that new borders would bring stability.
Britain grabbed the lion's share when it took Iraq and Kuwait, countries rich in oil and gas. The Balfour Declaration took one step further in this direction. The British government opened the way to permanent conflict in the region when, in collaboration with Chaim Weizmann, president of the Zionist Federation and Israel's first president, it recognized the Jewish homeland in Palestine. This policy, it is worth noting that the Balfour Declaration should be really named after Alfred Milner, right-hand man to the cosmopolitan Cecil Rhodes, as revealed by Carroll Quigley in his book, The Anglo-American Establishment. A new chapter was opened in relations between the Arab and Talmudic Jewish world, following the Quincy Pact in 1945 and the creation of Israel in 1948. The wars between Muslim countries and Israel, supported by the Anglo-Saxon powers, have led to the creation of new concepts, such as the clash of civilizations, developed by the Middle Eastern scholar Bernard Lewis in his book Islam, working in collaboration with the American geopolitical analyst Zbigniew Brzezinski. He developed a theory which pushes for the disintegration of the Muslim world, or the Arc of Crisis, a plan outlined in Time magazine, 15 January 1979. In a similar vein, we again find plans for the dismantlement of Arab nations in the Oded Yinon report. To list the plans for the destruction of Arabia, we should add A Clean Break, written by Richard Pearl in 1996, and the works of Lieutenant Colonel Ralph Peters, whose plans were published by the Armed Forces Journal in May 2006. The latest version of the plan, written by Robert Wright, appeared in the New York Times on the 28th of September 2013, working in America's most prestigious intellectual institutions. This champion of the cause, who is the public face of a scheme supported by the institutions of what Donald Trump calls the deep state, continues the work of his predecessors to break up Libya and the Arabian Peninsula into distinct ethnic and religious enclaves. In this map, Robert Wright shows how 5 countries miraculously become 14, explaining that the state borders could easily be changed as a result of wars and ethnic conflicts. He even mentions the idea of creating city-states, Baghdad, Misrata, and Jabal al-Druze. It has to be said that these maps, which appeared in the Zionist-owned New York Times, would appear to be similar to those drawn up by Ralph Peters. In particular, you see Medina and Mecca surrounded by the same geographical entity. Ultimately, the most important point about these documents is that they prove that these Israeli and Anglo-Saxon policy pressure groups have no intention of letting go of their insane ambitions.